Good morning. Welcome to the Center, First Center for Spiritual Living in New York. We want to welcome you if this is your first time. And we want to let you know that there's no coincidence that you're here. Some of you are joining us this week on our Instagram. I think we're starting to broadcast on TikTok, if that's possible. I heard that yesterday. So there's many of you who join us every morning. We're glad you're here. And for those who are listening to the broadcast this week on YouTube or elsewhere, we meet every Sunday morning at 10:45 Eastern Standard Time. And we also broadcast every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in New York, we welcome you to come into the center. So welcome to those who are finding us for the first time in all these different platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. This is really great. We kind of like became an internet thing. I won't say by mistake, but out of necessity as we went through COVID. Every gathering we do at the center, we have a time for sharing. It's really the most important part of it. I don't say the most important part, but it's a very important part of the service. This is something that I started doing before I came to New York. When I was in Florida and I was the pastor of a church, I started having a community time because I realized, churches are changing and people are wanting and looking for places to connect. So early on, I began to have that be part of everything that we've done, and it's proved to be very, very interesting and helpful. I think you'll get a lot out of the sharing after everything we do on Sunday or Thursday. So, and the other thing I want to say is, because some people feel that they have to share and you don't, you can simply pass when we call your name. Nobody's trying to put anybody on the spot here, but we are wanting to, if we can, we'd love to hear from you, where you're from, and some basic things, what you want to share. So we invite you to do that. This center, by the way, was founded in 1949. I'm looking at the certificate on the wall by Raymond Charles Barker. So we've been around for a long time, sharing our encouragement and our positive messages. Teaching the science of mind. Essentially, we've been here for all these years to uplift people in the New York area, but now well beyond the New York area, because we're having listeners from all over the country and in different countries. However, you have found us this week. We're glad you're here. And if you're again watching in the outer community, meaning in the internet, please send Jimmy a message and join us on Zoom, and that way you can interact with us more personally. Another thing, if you tune in with us whenever you can, I think we can be a great support to you. I know we can be. People are creatures of habit, and we get caught up in our own stories. And the stories we get caught up in often are not true stories, but we get caught up in them. And we have a tendency as people to self-sabotage. Okay, and that gets into today's lesson entitled, Your Mind Can Heal You. So you can think of yourself having stories within you based upon things that people have told you, and you respond to them, and next thing you know, you're off to the races. So we have a tendency, this came from Ernest Holmes, to work against ourselves, to self-sabotage. And we do that when we listen and we participate in negative stories about people, places, and things. We have a tendency to forget how wonderful people are when we're caught up in talking about how bad they are. We have a tendency to forget how wonderful we are when we're putting ourselves down and our self-esteem is low. Louise Hay's great contribution, she was a student here at this center, this church. Her whole thing was learning to love yourself, because as you learn to love yourself, you won't be projecting all that negativity in your world. So it always begins here. So we have this tendency. It's not great when we're caught up in criticism and judgment And we do it with ourselves, and we do it with others, and we really want to begin to get a handle on that. We forget the perfection that is in everyone. As I was putting this lesson together, and I had a lot of wonderful slides that somehow or another did not get here today, but I can describe the slides. We forget the perfection that's in everybody. So I want you to remember, imagine the image, I'm sure you've all seen it before, it's of 3 monkeys. And what do? They see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? I used to have a ceramic, whatever you call it, statue of the 3 monkeys on my desk for many years. Don't participate in it if you can avoid it. As soon as people start doing gossip of who's doing wrong, what's doing wrong, or what the minister's doing wrong, because we get a lot of that with these in churches. Wherever, and in your own life, it could be your family, it could be your brother, it could be anybody, anything. We don't have to participate in that. We really don't. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, because I'm going to tell you, you're getting a large part of the things you're talking about wrong. You can't really know what's going on totally with another person. That's something, yet we'll talk about what they're doing, all the time, and it's really too bad that this is the place we find ourselves. So I like that image. I wish I could show it to you on the screen this morning. I promise you I dug through Google Images to find it for you. So we move on from that. We want to be relieved of the need to partake in what's wrong, okay? That's a need. If we're always talking about what's wrong, we're not being a lifter. So we want to be relieved of the need to partake in what's wrong. And you want to get to a place where you have no need within yourself to be a complainer, where you have no need to be hearing it, you don't have any need to be speaking it, and you don't have any desire to see it. And if you did so, that's the 3 monkeys is really it's a good step to being a practitioner. I'm not being a part of it. I will look past it. I will look beyond it. I know I don't know the whole truth of any situation. We who understand the teaching know that when we're talking all these ways and we're participating in this type of activity, we're forgetting the teaching, which is always going to be a celebration of life in every individual and everyone everywhere. We understand that every single person is an individualization of spirit, without exception. We forget that we could see and experience peace, joy, and love. Every encounter is, in fact, a holy encounter. So you're looking at God wherever you walk and whoever you see. So that need to criticize and make wrong, it's time to take a look at that. And you can do it if you want to. We teach you that we're always at choice, though we forget this. Life can be a great banquet. It can be amazing. It can be a beautiful thing. This, of course, depends on the tendency of our thinking. And our thinking, if it's affirmative, and if you keep seeing the good in people, if that's your preoccupation, if that's your desire, you will see it. If we're here to see the good in the God, is what I was taught 20 years ago. It's what a practitioner does. You're here to see the good in the God. You're here to look away from the other stuff. The other stuff is pretty much the way the world works. Everybody's reacting to everything. So we want to find a way not to be negative, if we can, in our day-to-day living and throughout our days. I might note that you're not doing anything wrong. It's just the teaching asks us to step up and step out of that world of action and reaction. I don't know if you have to be like the 3 monkeys, which is a dramatization, but you want to become more mindful and notice where your tendency of thought is. Is your thought life-giving? Is your thought positive? Are you a person who's full of praise, generally? Or are you criticizing a bit too much? Are you being critical of others? As we gather here week by week, we're doing a tremendous amount of work in the center. We broadcast every day of the week last week. As we gather here week by week, We're here, this group is here to uplift people in every way we can. We're going to do a Science of Mind class that's offered at a very low cost. It would be free if you want it to be free. Because we're here and we're committed to help people. And we're also doing an extensive survey now to see who wants and needs certified classes or accredited classes. Our research from last year was that there wasn't a great desire for it in numbers, but we're going to do an extensive survey. In the interim, during the summer, we have a wonderful class that is based upon the work of Ernest Holmes and Frederick Bales. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. I think it's a great starting point if someone's interested in the teaching, and it will just deepen a little bit what we do on Thursdays. As we gather week by week, as a group, we're becoming more mindful. And that's something I want, if I can, I'd love to have you all just engage for yourself in becoming more mindful of what you're thinking and what you're speaking, what's coming up for you week by week. Thursdays is a wonderful class because we always ask that question, what has it been like? What's your internal dialogue been like this week? Because we're going to be reminding you always that that's going to be mirrored in your day-to-day living. When we are critical and when we are negative, and these patterns do exist within us, it shows up. So we're becoming mindful of how we're showing up. More mindful because if we're speaking negatively and when we're speaking about others negatively, we are speaking about spiritual beings. And we're speaking about people who are doing the best that they can, who probably need your support more than they need your criticism. As we get involved in our teaching, we're becoming more mindful of our own thinking. Week after week, I suggest paying attention to that dialogue. It's the most important thing you can be doing, is just paying attention to what you're thinking and saying. All of us, I would say, are on a journey. It's said, in spiritual circles, it's the journey without a distance, because where's the journey? It's from your head to your heart. It's, a journey without a distance. People have searched the world over to find God, and God is always found right within us. And in this journey, we're trying our best to love and accept and approve of ourselves more and more day by day. So, as I ask on Thursdays, I'll throw it out today. What's it like being you the past day or so? Have you been happy? Have you been joyous? Have you been free? Have you been an encourager? Or have you been involved in gossip, tearing people apart? I say it's a rough question, but have you been tearing yourself apart? Have you been putting yourself down? Have you been talking ill of others? See, these are the things that we really want to stop. And we want to become more mindful of, because you could lift your mind and your heart and your sights much higher. So these are important questions, because whatever the answer, that tendency that lives within us, that inner dialogue, is what gets mirrored in your life. Raymond Charles Barker, our founder, here in 1949, opened his lessons with an affirmative prayer. I had it on the screen. I wish I did. I had it for a slide. And he's talking about drawing a pattern, and drawing a pattern that's clear. Do you know how it went exactly? Okay, we'll move on from it. Ernest Holmes says something similar. Ernest Holmes, in describing affirmative prayer, said, an affirmative prayer is a spiritual entity in the mental world, and it's equipped with power and volition, and it has just as much power and volition as there is faith in it. So that's the important thing to remember. Your prayer can move mountains, literally. It's an entity. I love hearing that word, entity, meaning it has everything it needs to bring itself forth into the world, as long as you have the faith in it. Our prayers are powerful if we have faith in them. They have power and volition. This power knows what to do. I so remember fondly Reverend Theodora always saying, this power knows what to do and how to do it. And the person that most completely believes in this power will produce the best results. This is the law of cause and effect. If you're doing an affirmative prayer and you do not have faith in what you're saying, then you won't demonstrate what you're affirming. One of my favorite ministers, I've had a lot of ministers I'm very, very fond of, was Jane Claypool. Our lives crossed in different ways in different times. She did a wonderful class on affirmative prayer years ago, and she was so very powerful. Reverend Jane exclaimed one day in this wonderful class that spiritual mind treatment is the crown jewel of religious science, and she said it with great dramatic flair. It is. It's powerful. You know, people do not realize that the power they have. Your whole life is an outpicturing of your consciousness. It's not about anybody else. It just isn't. So if you know that your life is an outpicturing of your consciousness, and you know that, okay, I don't have enough money, my relationship's rocky, I'm gossipy, I'm destructive, I'm one hot mess. If I know that that's all going on, then when you come into a teaching like this, you can say, oh my God, I have so much work to do. But that's okay, wherever you are. You know, Louise Hay would say it's like cleaning a house. You begin wherever you are. You begin with affirmative prayer. You know, what you do in affirmative prayer is you're going to begin to shift the tendency of your thinking from negative, when you're seeing evil, participating in evil, talking about evil, you're doing all that stuff, you're going to turn all that around. You're going to have zero interest in being part of those kinds of conversations. Affirmative prayer is the crown jewel of religious science, she thought. Such a powerful tool if you learn how to use it. Reverend Jane loved talking about affirmative prayer and healing, and I was with her in different times where we witnessed healing. We saw people who were able to heal things that most people wouldn't think are healable. Another person who loved spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer was the great Dr. Frederick Bales, he'll be the source of this class we're doing in the summer. He teamed up with Ernest Holmes many times. I had a picture for him today, but you can Google him if you want to. Frederick Bales was one of the most popular, important teachers of his time. He once said, "Our power of choice enables us to think like an angel or like a devil, a king or queen or a slave. Whatever we choose, mind will create and manifest." So my God, there's that power that you have again, right? You can get involved in all the gossipy things, and you can be critical, and you can tear yourself apart and others, or you can take it to a much, much higher place. It's entirely up to you. Dr. Bales really knew how much power that we wield. And he says we do it indiscriminately. We do it without thought. We do it, it's just unfortunate. The whole world has power. Every individual has power. The thing is, the world is evolving in its own time frame, and everyone is in a different place in consciousness. Our job, if we're really part of this teaching and really attempting to live it, is to see the goodness in everybody and not partake in any of the other conversations. Dr. Bales thought that the greatest need for any individual, and even for the world at large, is to have a quiet mind. I read it and I just thought, wow, that brought peace just in reading it. The greatest need for the individual, and even for the world, is to have a quiet mind. Our life, again, and he was commenting on it as well, is an outpicturing of all the chatter that goes on within us. So we want to become mindful. We really want to get a handle on that chatter because it plays out. The universe, of course, is silently going forward regardless of what we do. Now, we could align ourselves with the universe and then experience much more peace, much more joy, satisfaction, just by slowing things down and taking that pause that we often talk about here. And by stop reacting to everyone and everything we see on the television, or even in our own family circle or within the church. If we're always reacting to everything, and we're reacting to things we don't fully understand, and we're complaining about things we don't fully understand, it probably would be much better if we took Dr. Bales up on his suggestion. The greatest need for the individual, or even for the world, is to quiet their mind and stop the reaction. So stop reacting to everyone and everything you hear or see. This is something that we talk about often. We learn to center ourselves in peace and calm, and it's needed in every part of society and in every person. The world needs love, and it needs peace. And that world is your world, and it begins with you. Everybody talks about peace, and they often talk about peace when they themselves are angry, said Bales. Everybody wants it, but it'll never come by force. You can't go and start complaining to make other people change. It doesn't come that way. It starts with us by not reacting. It comes to us by realization. The realization the Spirit is here and nothing else. Again, God is here and nothing else. The rest of it, to a large extent, we make up. We're here, we're talking about metaphysics. That means that we live, move, and we have our being in the awareness of this presence. This is all that we really want to talk about here. We don't take positions. I know some of the organizations, spiritual organizations, are all about taking positions of who is right and who is wrong, and they're taking a lot of social positions. And when we come into religious science and we become practitioners, we're elevating our thinking to the place where we understand that we live, we move, we have our being in this divine substance. And we want to learn to be still and realize that we are one with this energy. Again, we will soon be doing a class. It'll be on a Tuesday night. When, Jimmy? July 12th at 7 o'clock. We'll soon be doing a class based upon the teachings of Ernest Holmes and Dr. Bales. He, incidentally, was born in New Zealand and studied medicine. And as he was completing his training, he was found to have diabetes. And that was very, very serious then. It was before insulin. It was considered incurable. In his search for answers, he came across the writings of Judge Thomas Troward. Judge Thomas Troward has several books that are part of the curriculum you would have to read to become a minister. So Dr. Bales, in his searching for answers, came across Troward, and he began to develop a philosophy for living which led to complete recovery of diabetes long before there was insulin, and he was in really rough shape. He became well enough to become the captain of his rugby team, if I remember it right. Later, as a student in a large London hospital, Dr. Bales closely observed the mental factors which entered into the recovery of patients, and he noticed that certain fundamental thought patterns produced bodily reactions. He reasoned if he could stimulate his patients' mental patterns, if he could cause them to think differently and develop different patterns toward healing, that there would become that he would see remarkable results, which he did. Dr. Bales proved it for himself in curing his own situation, and he brought this information to his patients. Louise Hay, years later, had a similar story. So it starts with a person who generally has had a healing or has discovered this, and they practice it. And and this is what he did, and this is what got him into ultimately into the teaching. Frederick Bales became an author and popular speaker and was quite close to Ernest Holmes. I was looking this week at all the books he wrote. There's probably 6, 7, or 8. Because some of them weren't books, some of them were classes. He had a lot of material. He, like Ernest Holmes, was a leader. He served with the Science of Mind founder, Ernest Holmes, as the assistant dean to the Science of Mind Institute. He also headed the largest Science of Mind center of its day in Los Angeles. For almost 15 years, he gave public lectures and he taught classes on the fundamental laws underlying health and prosperity and wholeness. Dr. Bales, in his attempt to help people, taught special classes. And here's the thing that's important, because it's one thing that we're learning about here in New York. He didn't just teach science of mind, though he ran one of the largest centers in the country. He was trying to reach out to people wherever he could find them. This was important because it's something we're attempting to do at the center here in New York, and we want to do more of it. He was committed to uplifting people wherever he found them. That, of course, was the great gift of Louise Hay also, in sharing our philosophy. It's similar to what we do every Thursday night in our self-healing class. Dr. Bales facilitated today what we would call spirit groups, special classes, he called them, to a wide array of different people. Every kind of club, every type of group, you would just need to send an invitation to him or his folks, because they would want to be there. And he would meet with people, and he wouldn't try to sound like a science of mind minister. He would attempt to help people at whatever level he found them. So he reached out to every kind of organization. I don't know if they were called treatment facilities back then, or sanitariums, business entities. His desire through his work was to show people how to apply these principles to bring greater success, happiness, and health in all areas of their life. Now, he had this thing. It was a new technique. Back then, it was called treatment. Okay, you all know what treatment is, right? And we're more or less familiar with it now, unless you're very new to our broadcast. And before I get into what he called his 7 R's, that's R, he had a technique. I'd like to share what he often said. He said, the science of mind philosophy is not psychological tricks. He said, our way is a life to be lived. It's a life to be experienced. And more than anything else, it's a life to be practiced. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. It's a life to be practiced. You want to come to the point where you realize that Spirit is here in every encounter. He gave his weekly lectures to full capacity audiences in Los Angeles, and he was well known for his weekly broadcasts on the radio. He was the author of Your Mind Can Heal You, Basic Principles of Science of Mind, one of my favorites, and then The Healing Power of Balanced Emotions. And he had another book on collected essays, and there was much more. Today's lesson, Your Mind Can Heal You. I thought I would share his 7-step approach to affirmative treatment, prayer treatment, what we now call affirmative prayer. And we do it differently today. So I've seen ministers argue over the number of steps for as long as I've been a minister. Most people in the country use 5 steps, some use 7, and some use 1. And I could tell you all the reasons why, and that'll be subject for another talk. But it's not as confusing as it might sound. Please understand, affirmative prayer is a very simple process. There are some things that you want to get right, and so don't get caught up or worried about the number of steps as I go through his way, because you can effectively treat in 1 step, 3 step, 5 steps, 7 steps. And again, that's subject of another class. Dr. Bales was known for these 7 R's, and it was his way of teaching people how to do effective prayer. All the elements that we currently teach are in his 7 R's. The fundamental truth to remember if we're doing an affirmative prayer for ourselves or for anybody is to know that we or the person is a perfect idea in the mind of God. As we learn to live the affirmative life, we're learning to see the good in everybody. We are laying down any need we have within ourselves to criticize anyone. We're clearing our consciousness of judgment, because we're judging often about things that we only have half the story. We are knowing, as we do treatment, that everyone is in the perfect place and evolving in consciousness. So we start by working to clear our consciousness to get to a place where we are one with life and sensing the perfect unfolding life. It's only then that we can draw new patterns. This is where we start. This is our place of beginning. And what we're doing, we're removing from our own minds any idea of imperfection, that we are wrong or someone else is wrong, that we are bad or someone else is bad. We're removing any concept that we are deficient or someone else is deficient in any way. We are clearing all of these ideas out of our consciousness, ideas of sickness, ideas that we're not enough. We're clearing out all of the negative opinions we have about ourselves and others. You might ask yourself, how can I do effective prayer treatment for myself and others when there's so much judgment, anger, and criticism I have within myself towards myself or others? And I know this audience wants to learn how to attract good circumstances, good people, good health into their life. I know you want to bring every good thing forward into your life. When you're working with the law of mind, it's important to consider some of these suggestions. We have in this teaching a teaching with a lot of little sayings that we use, and they're affirmations that can help you. These are not necessarily treatments, though, but they are a beginning point. You've heard some of them before. There's not a spot where God is not. It's a simple little saying, but when you take it deeply into your understanding, boy, it will silence you, because you realize, okay, I'm going to talk about this person ordinarily, and I'm going to do that, but there's not a spot where God is not, okay? There is this presence here that's in everyone. So do I really want to comment about where they are in their process of unfoldment? If you take this into your consciousness, it will inform your world that God is here. This presence is in all people. It's in people of every culture. This presence is in the most educated and the least educated. This presence is in both the saint and the sinner. We understand in this teaching that people all over the world and in our world grew up in circumstances that we could never possibly understand. None of us can really know the struggle of another person. Not even people in your family or people in your church. We make a lot of assumptions about people, and as a result, we judge quickly without knowing the full story. We must look at our own lives, and as we look back, we can understand that we've made some mistakes, in some cases some very big mistakes. And as we look at other people today, we can't understand their, we really can't understand their struggles, so we probably really should put the focus on what we're thinking and doing. Yet we jump to conclusions about people, places, and things. We do that usually when we have unresolved issues within ourselves. It's commonly called a projection. I can recall a time very vividly when I was involved in a unity church many years ago, and I was frustrated with the pastor at the time. I was focused on who was right and who was wrong. I had no idea all the things that he was dealing with. I'm going to tell you that. It's very, and if you're working in a center, the pastor is always dealing with a lot of things. I could quickly see what was wrong when I was younger, or so I thought. And what he really needed from me back then, when I was in my mid-20s, he needed me to be a supporting consciousness. When the unity group was going through such a difficult time, he came there to Florida a little bit like I came to New York to build up what was once a successful unity church. He was coming out of the equivalent of a pandemic at the time and doing whatever he could to keep that group together. As we mature in this teaching, increasingly we learn not to judge. We can never know the whole story. Then why, again, are we so quick to criticize? If I have one regret, going back those years, it would be that I wish I were more supportive. I was one of his best students, but I was young and I was judging everything. When we find ourselves talking about people, our loved ones, our families, our friends in a negative way, or even when we're really down in life, we have the problem. They don't have the problem. We have the problem. So it's very important for us to look at what we are creating people to be as we judge them. It's very important for us to look at what we are creating the circumstances to look like and to be, because often, most often, we have a lot of it wrong. As I think of that same minister, Reverend Cameron, who regrettably I was critical of, he often said, "Greg, life is like a schoolhouse and it's full of lessons. As you look into your own life, you know that you've had many challenges. And I know all of you on the call, you've had a lot of challenges. We all have. I have. And it's important to remember that you've gotten through them. And if you look back only a few years for a moment, You will realize that you are wiser than you have ever been before. And you're making course corrections all the time. You have this internal guidance system called spirit, and you listen eventually to it, and you adjust. And you know life is good. You are a spiritual being that's evolving. And as you grow, you're going to become less concerned with other people are doing wrong. As you grow, it will not interest you. You will be less concerned about everything that's wrong or missing. You'll be increasingly entering a world where you know everything is okay. As you realize this, you don't have to fight every fight or let yourself be disturbed and get caught up in other people's stories. If you're really practicing this teaching, you're going to understand that. You're going to understand perfection is always unfolding right before you and within you. Popular author Chuck C., another book I read when I was probably 25, the name of the book was Putting a New Pair of Glasses. So as we consider New Thought and all the works of the greats, we always come back to one central idea, and that is that it's up to us to find a new way of seeing, to challenge ourselves to see the good and not partake in the other kinds of conversations, to challenge ourselves to have compassion and realize that that is our greatest gift, becoming a lifter, a cheerleader, a champion. We have the ability to see the good in all things. We have the ability to see the unfolding good in God in every person. We have the ability to heal ourselves by releasing our judgment and our criticism of ourselves and others. It's always going to be an internal process, an inside job. We clear the way, as Barker always said, so we can draw a new pattern. We clear out our judgments, our negativity. For our judgments and our negativity, our resentments, our criticisms are our problem, much more our problem than anyone else's. From my grade school Bible class, and I go back a long time now, it was always the same message. So here is the 7 R's that I was talking about. First of all, we want to find a way to center ourselves, to breathe in a state of relaxation. We would say, if we were doing it here, we recognize and we know that there is God, there is peace, there is love. So we want to find a way to center ourselves to be in a state of relaxation and breathe that in. Relaxation is the first R. We get very comfortable when we're relaxed. You might start by doing some gentle breathing where you become more mindful, relaxed. The second R is recognition. We recognize in this treatment process that we are not speaking into a void. We are surrounded by the creative mind of the universe, which receives our thoughts that are embodied in our words and sets to work to carry it out into material form. Dr. Bale's third R, relationship. We consciously, in this process, unify with the creative mind, knowing that we ourselves, or the person we're treating for, and this mind are all one. There's never any separation between them and us, between God and us. The fourth R is reasoning, where we arrive at this inner certainty. We dissolve all doubts. We go through a process of reasoning to arrive at this certainty. The fifth R is realization. Once we have arrived at the point where we realize the inner perfection of ourselves or the one we're doing a prayer for, we shall know it, we will feel it, we'll sense it, because we shall have arrived at a place of quiet and calm assurance. The sixth R is release. We are not responsible for the outcome of the affirmative prayer treatment. Our only responsibility is to build a very clear image picture in our mind of the perfection of ourselves and others, knowing that each person is an individualization of source. We release the need to see the flaw in ourselves and others. We are active in releasing doubts, worry, criticism, and judgment. We release a clear image into the creative mind, knowing it's going to bear fruit. The next R, there was responsibility. Now the next R is rejoice. So with this step, we give thanks for the success of our affirmative prayer, releasing it to Spirit to do the work, knowing that there will be a perfect demonstration, that it will work out as we have pictured or even in a better way. So we can be excited knowing life is responding to us. So those are his 7 R's. To summarize for today, recalling Dr. Jane Claypool, we have such a tremendous gift in this teaching. I mean, I know that we have ourselves, we've all created our lives up to this point, and we've learned a lot, we've grown a lot. I've learned a lot and grown a lot, but we can do more. We can do so much more. The thing is, if you consciously learn how to work with this power, the places you can go. Dr. Holmes said, we have the greatest power in the world at our disposal. It's just, there's no point in complaining about people, places, and things. You can go, the whole universe gives you green lights. There is no limit. So it's time, I would say, there's an invitation to join in with us week by week and take a deeper dive into this teaching. And realize everyone is doing the best they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. I have no need to talk about other people and what they're doing. I'm sure I would get it wrong. We do our work where? In consciousness with ourselves. That's the way you'll transform the world, is through the transformation of your own consciousness. So we meet every Thursday at 7. I would love to welcome you all. Many of you already join us there. Invite your friends. We're growing. We're having over 50 people, 50, 60 people every Thursday now. And our audience is a couple hundred of people who are partaking in our viewership every week now. So this is really wonderful. We've developed an online community, and we have a studio audience today, so I'm really happy to see the people here. Remember, it's our responsibility to develop a healing consciousness. Nobody else's. Remember the 3 monkeys. I don't want to see it, hear it, speak it, or be a part of it. We're not here to criticize anybody. We're here to love. We're not here to be fault finders. We're here to be practicing seeing the God in the good. And so it is for this morning. I look forward to hearing from everybody in just a minute, the other side of the break. Thank you, thank you.